Stan, we're live.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome to In the Dugout. This is a special Monday edition of In the Dugout, and I am your host, Mike Svenhaus. In just a few minutes, we're going to be speaking with GOP Minority Leader Blake Filippi, who has been raising alarms around the state about a bill that's going to be voted on the whole House floor tomorrow morning. In fact, this issue is so important. We're going to forgo the cap wearing in the dugout today. My Rhode Island cap, it's a sad day for Rhode Island if this bill passes, but I am wearing my alarm orange, my 4 points alarm orange today to signify the emergency that really we're about to happen, that's flown under the radar largely, and Representative Filippi and myself will be trying to raise awareness. And we're doing this show on Monday because there's a vote tomorrow in the House. Just a quick look ahead. Tomorrow we have Justin Katz, the good, the bad, and the interesting bills. Wednesday's a big day. Talking about transgender issues. There's a couple of bills in the House to try to keep fairness in women's sports. We'll talk about that with Dr. Michelle Cretella and Senator Elaine Morgan. Also, Senator Lou Raptakis will join us later in the show. And then Thursday, Dr. Boston. All right. To the issue at hand, to this single topic today. You remember Texas last month or a few weeks ago, the cold snap, and they had no power. They had no electricity because the renewable grid that part of Texas was largely relying on failed. Well, the environmental radicals in this state want that to happen, put Rhode Island in that situation right now. And it's not just that. It's the cost of this bill. It's the process of this bill. It's the tyranny of this bill, all of which we're going to talk about here with Blake Filippi. But this bill is being rammed through the General Assembly. And I would argue, I was even on a radio show earlier today, just briefly, but I would argue that this is being done in really a non-democratic, a true democratic way. Let me explain. Do you remember anybody at a high level really campaigning that we're going to impose massive energy regulations on every family and business sector? Was this part of any campaign or election debate? No. Lawmakers seize power and then they decide to pass their pet projects. Have we had a public debate in any way on this bill, discussed for weeks and weeks, if not years, on radio stations? I mean, this is a bill, as you will hear, folks, that can change your life, that will make Rhode Island a far less hospitable place to raise a family, build a career, or invest in a business. This is a bill that have massive implications on every Rhode Islander, and yet it's being moved through the General Assembly without any real debate. The hearings, during this pandemic time are a joke. Online hearings. I didn't even know about this bill till last week, and I didn't even know till Saturday that the Senate had already passed a version of this bill, which means that if the House passes it tomorrow, it's a done deal. It goes to the governor's desk for signature or veto, or we don't know, and that's the other problem. Governor McKee has refused to take a position on this or on any energy bill. We've called on him to withdraw from the TCI gas tax. That's another energy tyranny bill. We've asked him to take a position and say that he will veto or stop this bill, but silence. My last comment before we bring on Leader Filippi. I'm going to say right now, and we'll see if the leader agrees with me. In the last year, we are suffering from three forms of tyranny like we really have never seen before. First, in the Emergency Powers Act under the pandemic, the governor, Raimondo, seized the emergency powers, expanded on those beyond the intent of the law, and ruled everything in Rhode Island about the pandemic from one branch of government. We're supposed to have three branches of government. One branch of government. General Assembly refused to engage. The courts refused to listen to lawsuits. Now we have a General Assembly you ought to see the bills that are out there. I mean, we won't have time to talk about those today, but just like you're seeing federally, the stuff they're trying to push through is and yet our new governor is silent on all. The only thing he's talking about is COVID. Completely silent on the economy, completely silent on these major issues So now you have basically a tyrannical General Assembly doing whatever the hell it wants. There's no debate. There's no opposition allowed from either party or even from within its own party or from one branch of government to the other. And then this bill wants to create a third branch of tyranny. It wants to give away your right to choose which energy options are best for you, your family, and your business. And it wants to seize control. They want to give that control to a group of unelected ideologues, unelected bureaucrats, autocrats who want to make those decisions for you. What energy options you will have, what energy products you must buy and must install and implement in your life or your business or your home or your building, and how much it will cost you. They want to determine all that without leaving you any choices. Third-party, unelected autocrats who are unaccountable to anybody. This is not the way democracy is supposed to work. So let's bring on House Minority Leader of the Republican Caucus, Representative Blake Filippi. Blake, welcome back to In the Dugout.
Happy to be here from my car.
Yeah, I can see you're in your car. Well, I doubt you're too happy to be here because this is, we are tomorrow looking at something really dark, and you've been doing a great job all day, all over the media, raising awareness. But tell our viewers quickly what's about to happen tomorrow.
Well, essentially, the legislature is delegating all authority to regulate anything having to do with emissions to a committee of bureaucrats within the executive branch. And that committee of bureaucrats must produce a plan to reduce our emissions by 2030, 45% below 1990 levels, by 2040, 80% below 1990 levels, and by 2050, net zero emissions. And that committee must produce a plan. They have no discretion. They have to produce it no matter how expensive. They don't have any judgment, even if the only plan they can come up with would be ruinous to the state, have to produce that plan. And then every agency in state government is required by law to enact regulations pursuant to that plan. And those state agencies have no discretion, must pass the regulations, cannot say, no, this is too expensive.
All right.
It regulates everything.
Before we get too much further, and I want you to continue, but I want to take a time out here. This means that we consumers will have no more choices as to what kind of energy we can consume, right? Someone else is going to decide that for us, right?
Correct. And that's something that traditionally the legislature has taken a vote on.
Yeah, it's bad enough that the legislature would take away our choices, but now you're saying a third-party group of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats are going to be in charge of making those decisions for every family and business in our state.
Yeah, and it goes deep. Like you talked about TCI, right?
Yes.
Right now, that would have to be passed by the General Assembly.
Right.
This law allows this unelected committee of bureaucrats to bring us into TCI. This law allows an unelected group of bureaucrats
without the General Assembly.
No General Assembly involvement. It's done. The die is cast. Fundamental change in the way our republic works.
Because this law basically says that anything that will help us get to zero emissions, you have to undertake, or else you get sued, right?
So it says that anything dealing with emissions is now within the ambit of this Executive Council on Climate Change. They have control over everything having to do with emissions, and they must enact a plan to get us to those target emissions levels. And so they can choose to regulate what they want in order to get us to those levels.
Does it matter what the people think?
No. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be public comment, what good that will do. I got to be honest. I think we're tying the hands of this committee because they have no choice, because these emissions standards are so aggressive, these targets, that they're going to have no choice but to have dramatic regulations. And that comes from the state's own report from the Brattle Group. This is the state's own consultant. The Brattle Group said that the only way you're going to meet the 2040 reduction of 80% is if every home in the state is forced to decarbonize and retrofit. Decarbonize is basically you can no longer use oil, natural gas, or propane. That's 91% of the houses in the state. You have to install electric heating at a cost of $50,000 to $100,000 per house. That's
All right, so
anywhere from
let's
18 to
dig into
36
that a
billion
little.
dollars.
Let's dig into
Yeah.
that a little more. So that probably means no more petroleum gasoline cars, no more gasoline, right? Probably.
Oh yeah. To reach that 80%
Yeah,
level,
right.
where I said you have to retrofit your house, that also includes
No
you
more
can only have
natural
electric.
gas heating of your home, right?
No, none.
Which means you got to change all your heating system in your house, right? You got to change the cars you drive and spend tens and tens of thousands on those, right?
Yeah, if you're lucky, tens of thousands.
And not to mention whatever the hell the cost of energy and is going to be at that point in time, right?
Yeah, right. Because you're going to massively increase the demand by putting every house on electric heat and every car on electric. You're going to spend billions of dollars to upgrade our grid to handle this added load. And then all the electricity you're going to purchase for these inefficient things, i.e., heating your house with electricity is incredibly inefficient for anyone who's ever tried it. You're going to have to buy electricity, that's 100% renewable.
And they propose that they're going to get this renewable energy that doesn't exist today. There is no renewable energy that can supply this level of power to a grid. Where are they proposing we get this from?
Well, they think technology is going to change.
Well, they think.
They think, and I'm sure they believe that this will spur the investment in this type of technology. Setting up these targets will make investors invest in the technology.
They think.
They think.
In their never land of make believe, they can envision this happening, right?
Yeah.
Even though in the real world, like in Texas and everywhere else in Germany where they've tried this, we're seeing that this strategy is a complete failure.
Yeah. I mean, this is a takeover by government of everything in your personal life. And I'll give you some extreme examples because it's everything having to do with emissions. You go on Google right now and type in climate change and what we eat. You're going to find thousands of articles that say we all have to move to a plant-based diet in order to save the earth. Theoretically, the ability to control our food supply is included in this.
No more meat in Rhode Island?
I mean, will they enact that regulation? I don't know. But the point is, they could. The point is the massive delegation of legislative authority to these unelected bureaucrats. It's so expansive, the scope of power that we're giving to these unelected bureaucrats. It goes to everything. It goes to everything. You and I are emitting carbon right now by talking.
Now you have, I know we got a lot more to cover, but you're going to be putting in an amendment tomorrow. Your amendment directly addresses this unilateral, unelected, unaccountable bureaucratic control, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're putting in a lot of amendments. Like the main one, like the one that goes to the core of this, the philosophical one, is that your elected representatives need to make these decisions. So we're going to say, sure, you can have the ECCCC come up with this plan, and it's submitted to the General Assembly as an advisory plan for the General Assembly to consider in enacting legislation.
Those are the people that need to be held accountable, right? You, the elected officials.
Exactly. And these are the people who should be making these decisions that deeply affect your personal lives, your business life, the way our municipalities plan and zone, how your business operates, what type of fuel you can use. Can you even have a grill anymore in your backyard? Is it going to have to be powered by electricity?
I'm grilling tonight.
You might.
So your amendment now, all right. So your amendment would say that this commission, this economic, whatever, ECC, Economic Climate Change Coordinating Council, it's an EC to the fourth.
Yeah, ECCCC.
ECC, yeah, EC to the fourth. Wow, Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council. I mean, anything with a name that long is hopelessly bureaucratic and ideological.
It's got more C's than the CCCCP. It's got more C's than the Communist China Party.
All right, so your amendment would say that they can make recommendations, but they basically have to be voted on before they can be ratified or implemented by the General Assembly, where the power rightly exists, right? That will basically be your amendment.
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch. I mean, there's another spin on it. So when you read the law says that once they issue this plan, every state regulatory body must implement the plan, and they have power to implement the plan. Massive expansion of all of our regulatory bodies to implement this plan. So we have two amendments within this vein. The first one I just said, it's purely advisory. General Assembly must pass the law. The second one says that the plan, once received by the General Assembly, must receive the approval of the General Assembly, and only at that time may the regulatory bodies enact regulations pursuant to the plan.
Who are the major sponsors and drivers of this in the House?
You know, it's been Chris Blazewski, the now majority leader. It's been his bill, I think, for the past 4 years. Now that he's become majority leader, he's handed it off to Lauren Carson from Newport.
So what you just said brings up a really interesting question. So if this bill has been around for 3 or 4 years, what's different about this year that it's being brought to the floor for a vote? And I would suggest that it's a new Speaker of the House. Is this a reflection? I mean, Speaker Mattiello, I didn't believe him all the time when he said it, but he said he was the firewall against the progressive left agenda. You hear no such statements from current Speaker Joe Shekarchi. Is this what the state? Is this, I mean, I'm not going to say what they get, but is this a result, do you think, that this is now being brought to the floor this year because of the change in Speaker?
I mean, I think it's clear Nick Mattiello would not have allowed this to come to the floor.
Yeah.
And a tree is known by its fruit. And I'm very concerned that this is one of the first major things in Speaker Shekarchi's speakership is this type of takeover of our lives by unaccountable bureaucrats.
Now, you're not going to like this question, but you're a man, you're a spokesperson. So speaking of Speaker Mattiello, the woman that replaced him, a Republican, voted for this bill. Barbara Ann Fenton Fung voted for this bill to move it out of the committee. She's the only Republican not to disavow the TCI gas tax. Why would any Republican support this bill?
I have no idea. You know, Barbara Ann Fenton Fung made a decision at the beginning of the year not to join the Republican caucus, and
Not to join the Republican caucus?
Not to join the Republican caucus. So she is operating. So she's operating on, on her own. That's her choice. It's her right as a representative. I just hope that she didn't understand the bill. This happened fast. You really have to dig in to understand how the pieces fit together. I put up an analysis on my Facebook page, which spells it out. And I just hope she didn't understand really what this bill does. And a lot of my Democratic colleagues who I've been calling, running around all day talking to, they didn't understand what this bill does. Most people, it wasn't on anyone's radar. This just came through.
That was my point. This is such an important bill. This needs months, if not years of debate before we do something of this magnitude in this state.
Most of my colleagues thought that this CCC plan was just an aspirational plan, a plan which, gives us a roadmap that the General Assembly can then see if it wants to implement or not.
There are legal provisions in here that allow for lawsuits if this plan isn't followed, right?
Yeah, by any Tom, Dick, and Harry off the street, they can sue. And frankly, when you read it, they just can't sue government. I think they can sue the individuals and the businesses that aren't complying with these government dictates. It's pretty broad standing provision.
Well, I remember back in the old roadmap. This is a folks. If you've been around long enough, this is a roadmap Rhode Island type bill for many reasons. I mean, it's what we warned against many years ago. First of all, it is ceding power and authority to a third-party group of unelected bureaucrats. So the roadmap Rhode Island theme would be more like a TCI or a Reggie. It would give it to a regional power of unelected bureaucrats. This particular bill gives it to an in-state body of unelected bureaucrats, and it requires confirmation with conformity, I should say, with green energy wishes of the far left. I mean, I can imagine that a subsequent provision might be, you won't be able to sell your house or commercial building, if it doesn't meet the green energy code, right? I mean, those were some of the provisions that we saw in other roadmap Rhode Island legislation that this will be the new code, right? And if you don't meet the code, maybe there'll be fines, maybe they'll force you to do it, but they certainly won't let you sell your own property if you don't meet code. Could you envision something like that happening?
This is only going to be effective with broad enforcement provisions, right? Like
Right.
hey, they might say, yeah, you can keep your oil burner, but there's no oil can be delivered. So you're going to have a house without heat. At some point, they've got to get to these emission targets. And our own consultant said, yep, carbon-based heat's got to go.
All right, let's let the people know what's the timeline in this. So the House will vote tomorrow, and unless you pull a miracle, they will likely pass it, because once a bill's brought to a floor, it pretty much always passes. Nobody wants to disappoint leadership or bring it. So you'll pass it. Is it the identical language that the Senate passed?
So it's not the Senate bill, it's the House bill. So the way we do things is kind of odd. We each pass the same bill. They cross like ships in the night. And then one of the chambers has to pass the other's bill. And then that one goes up to the governor, or they both pass the other bills and they both go up to the governor. So the Senate passed its bill. The House is going to pass its bill. One of them's got to transmit to the other side and then go up. So it's not immediately going to go to the governor. But it's not guaranteed that the House is going to pass this. It really
you think
isn't.
you have a chance to defeat it?
I mean, listen, this needs to be sent back to committee. Many of my Democratic friends I've spoken to who didn't know what the heck this thing does said, my God, we need to pull back and we need to have a Democratic caucus to discuss this.
Are any of them willing to stand up tomorrow and say that?
I think so. There's a large group of Democrats who see this for what it is, and they know it's repugnant to the values of this country.
Anyone you'd like to name right now?
I'm gonna leave it up to them to reveal their names to the media. It's just not my place. I would encourage them to speak out publicly. They've assured me they're voting no on the floor. A good group of them. Now, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that the speaker sees the opposition, does the right thing, and says, listen, we got to take a pause on this. Now, that's only going to happen if everybody calls their state rep and puts the pressure on and says, right, you cannot do this. You have to put a pause.
All right. So we have, as you may know, we have a website, rifreedom.org/energy choices. Larry will put that in the comments, but rifreedom.org/ and you can energy choices / energy, and you can fill that out and it will automatically send an email to the governor. You've probably been getting copied on some of these emails, to the governor, to the majority leaders in both houses, to the minority leaders in both chambers, and to the Senate president and House Speaker. So it's sending out 7 emails every time the form is completed. We've had over 2,000 signatures on this, which means that that over 10,000 emails have been sent out. So you ought to mention that in your floor debate. That I've never seen a response like this to any petition or form we've put out like this. This has been overwhelming. Every hour there's another 40 or 50 coming in. We've had 600 just in the last 24 hours alone. So it is not popular, but I mentioned the governor.
Hold on. I want to stop you. Everyone should do that email. You should go right now, but nothing is better than picking up the phone. I got to tell you, as a rep, when someone calls me,
do both.
So do the emails, make the phone call.
Do both.
All your reps and senators, they publish their numbers. If it's not their home number, it's their office number. And their secretary will say, listen, you got 50 calls from someone in your district about this issue. You
can look it up easy enough on the website, so to do the form, rifreedom.org/energy choices, or look up, I think even Gatsby Project, our friends over there, have a page that says lawmaker contact that lists the phone numbers of every lawmaker. Good. So you can look that up there as well. All right. So the governor, as far as I can tell, we've called on him 2 weeks ago to withdraw from the TCI compact, the gas tax that Raimondo signed us up for. We called on him today to say he's going to veto or stop this legislation. I think the better course of action, like you suggested, would be for the governor to weigh in. He's got to pay attention to the Rhode Island economy. It can't be all COVID 100% of the time. And he's going to say, wait a minute, we got to slow this down. Let's pull this bill back. Like you said, let's look at it again and see how we can make it so we don't create these little bureaucratic tyrannies. Have you had any indication from the governor's office how Dan McKee comes down on this issue?
So I've been told they're watching it, but frankly, we need his leadership right now.
Right. No leadership right now.
I mean, really, that's what we need. He is the small business guy. I believe
Right.
it. He has stood up for small businesses for the past year when the prior governor wasn't. This is the small business issue. So trust me, Amazon's going to be fine. Walmart's going to be fine, right? They got no problem with this. They love it because it's going to put their small business competition out of business.
So he's spoken up. You're right. He's spoken verbally for years that he's a supporter of small business.
Correct.
The time is up. The time is up. Now this is a job killing, small business crushing energy mandate bill. If Governor McKee lets this go through without fighting it, those words to me are absolutely meaningless. Your thoughts?
That you couldn't be more right. You know what you do, and literally, he's done the right things in relatively small things, right? This is so expansive and so revolutionary in the system of government we have that it makes everything else that you've done, I've done, and Governor McKee has done drops in the bucket. Tiny little drops in the bucket that are meaningless compared to what this bill is going to create. So if you can't stand up on this thing, frankly, everything else you've done in the past is meaningless.
And Blake, you know what bothers me the most about this bill is the, well, I'll show that is the attitude behind it. I used the word energy tyranny a little while ago. And these leftist environmentalists really think that they know best, really think that they can force us to make choices that we don't want to make, and for somehow it's going to be in everybody's best interest. So I want to play for you, thinking of that, I want to play this video for, I don't know if you've seen it, I talked to you about it. This is one of, now this has regard to the TCI gas tax, which is all part of the same thinking behind this Rhode Island Green New Deal bill, which is what we're calling this bill that we're talking about, H5445. I want you to listen to this attitude of this climate change official in Massachusetts. And I will tell you, it's the same attitude, this lousy, tyrannical attitude that these self-proclaimed know-it-alls think that they can make decisions for you. So check out this 40-second video.
One thing that we found through our analysis is that 60% of our emissions come from, as I have been starting to say, you and me, except you guys are in Vermont. 60% of our emissions come from residential heating and passenger vehicles. So let me say that again. 60% of our emissions that need to be reduced come from you, the person across the street, the senior on fixed income, right? There is no bad guy left, at least in Massachusetts, point the finger at, turn the screws on, and break their will so they stop emitting. That's you. We have to break your will, right? I can't even say that publicly. What I'm trying to say is,
I can't even, did that come through okay?
Came through perfect.
So you, the guy up the street, the senior on fixed income, you're the bad guys for driving your cars and heating your homes. You're the people we want to point fingers at, turn the screws on, and break your will so you will drive and heat your homes less. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Our bill is worse than the Massachusetts one.
Yes. And that was just the TCI gas tax. Your bill is talking about all energy. Energy.
Massachusetts has an all energy bill right now they're dealing with, and ours is worse.
In fact, you
So that's the mindset.
You cited on a radio show today, and I saw the link that our friends now, the Beacon Hill Institute are experts in energy. They're right up in Massachusetts. They've done a number of reports on us on how various energy initiatives of the left would cost families out of their budget, cost jobs, in the economy, reduce gross domestic product. They did a study for us on the TCI gas tax, which showed $1,200 per family cost. This would be $1,200,000 probably per family. Well, maybe not that much, but a lot. And but they also did a study generically on the Massachusetts bill, which you said isn't as bad as the Rhode Island bill. And what did that Massachusetts bill study show, Blake?
Quote, the absolute zero, that's the net zero target. The absolute zero approach embodied in the legislation would be economically ruinous. It would increase costs to the average Massachusetts households to unacceptable levels.
And Rhode Island's bill would make it worse.
Yeah, Rhode Island's bill is worse. They have similar targets, but Rhode Island's bill delegates so much more authority to these unelected bureaucrats. At least in Massachusetts, they're retaining some of the authority to do these things. The things they're doing, I don't necessarily agree with, but at least their Massachusetts General Assembly is having the guts to make some of these decisions themselves. In Rhode Island, we're just passing it all to the ECCCC, saying you have to meet these targets. We don't care if you don't like the plan, if it costs Rhode Island $100 billion. You have to enact the plan. That plan has the force of law, and no one can stop it at that point.
So when
unless the General Assembly repeals it.
Okay, so when you consider that video we just watched, how they want to turn the screws on and break our will, and then these costs, these economically destructive costs that they want to forcefully impose on all of us, is this image here far off the mark in your view?
I mean, it's clearly what's going on here. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Mike. And the people on the other side, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they think that what they're doing is the right thing, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And where they're taking us is impoverishment.
Oh, it's pure terror.
And a lack of a Republican form of government. They want all these decisions to be made. Carbon taxes, taxes on your fuel, taxes on what you eat because it's not the right type of food. These are all things that the General Assembly needs to consider and vote on, and they want to delegate it all away to these unaccountable bureaucrats. It's just un-American. It is the most un-American thing.
Now, one thing we only briefly touched upon in this bill is that it would, the enforcement, that not only would these state agencies be pretty much mandated and compelled by law to adopt any program, regardless of the cost to people, to businesses, to the economy, to the state, to pass any bill that helps reduce carbon emissions and meet those targets. And in order to enforce that, I've never seen a bill that says, and you can sue state agencies or people or individuals if somebody thinks they're not doing the right thing to reach those targets. I've never seen that kind of language. I got to get Judge Flanders on this show and ask him about that. Have you ever seen that kind of language in a bill before?
No, I mean, not this broad. It's called the standing doctrine. Who can sue? This bill purports to imbue any Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street, any organization, any individual with the power to sue state government if they don't carry out these plans, which they don't really have discretion not to. So if they say, we can't do this, this is going to bankrupt the people of Rhode Island, some environmental group can come off the street and sue the state and seek a superior court injunction ordering that agency to enact the regulations in the plan or ordering the ECCC to issue the plan.
And the plan is so vague. And like you said, it's so broad and so vague that, like we just joked about earlier, I mean, hell, a lot we've been joking about the last few years is coming true. But if somebody had the great idea that eating meat causes environmental emissions, you could basically envision that a court might say, yeah, eating meat or stopping eating meat for Rhode Island would help us reach the targets faster. So we're gonna ban meat, right? I mean, it's silly, but look at all the silliness that is happening around us. All right, so I'll just make that comment, but the reason I brought it up was this: I got contacted by Patricia Morgan, who's one of your GOP members, and apparently she's putting in an amendment to remove that section of the bill that basically opens the door for such frivolous and biased and partisan lawsuits. Will you be supporting that amendment as well?
Of course, and we have some other amendments too that deal with the standing issue. There's a lot of different ways to attack it. Totally support Rep. Morgan, what she's doing, and we've got some other ones too that go and really look at that standing issue and say maybe it should just be the Attorney General that has standing, not every single advocacy group. There'd be never-ending litigation. Some people will think it never goes far enough. They'd be in court forever.
Right. That's right.
Or we're also considering saying, listen, in order for this standing provision that allows anyone to sue to take effect, there must be a resolution of non-compliance passed by both houses of the General Assembly. So it's not automatic. Your elected representatives actually have to determine that the law, the plan, isn't being applied or carried out by the other state agencies. We have to say it isn't before someone can sue. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but that enforcement provision is insane. I've never seen anything like it. And frankly, I don't even know if it's constitutional, because standing is a doctrine developed by the courts saying who has the ability to come before us. They can only hear cases and controversies. I can't sue on your behalf. Our courts have said that the members of the public don't have standing to contest government actions. You have to have a particularized injury in order to have standing, right? And so I don't know that just someone off the street has a particularized injury, and I don't know that our General Assembly can confer them standing, because that's a court doctrine. It's like it's one of the court's constitutional roles to decide who can come before us.
All right, I'm going to try to get Judge Flanders on my show to talk about that. It'll be too late probably for your discussion tomorrow, but do you have just 5 more minutes, Blake?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I just want to remind people again to take your advice and our advice. Representative Filippi's advice is call your lawmaker, find their number, call them and tell them to withdraw and rethink House Bill 5445. We're asking you, our center, as you can see right here, has a webpage, rifreedom.org/energy choices, and where you can fill out this form, which will send an email to the governor and 6 other General Assembly leaders. So take action. Do not sit there silently. Do it yourself. Share this post. Tell people to call their lawmakers. Tell your friends. Send out emails. Folks, this really is it. So the timeline again. So let's go back to the timeline. What you expect to happen if it passes the House tomorrow? What happens next and when?
So if it passes the House tomorrow, it'll be transmitted over to the Senate, and they'll have it. We have their Senate bill that they've passed. They've already transmitted to us.
And you have how long to act on that?
There's no limit.
So in theory, both bills could just sit there forever?
Yes.
In theory, or they could act on them next week.
Yeah, they could schedule it, the Senate bill, for a committee vote tomorrow and have it come to the floor. So it can happen. So if we pass it tomorrow, then we're sitting and waiting. What's the next action? Because the Senate has to pass the House bill, or the House has to pass the Senate bill in order for it to go up.
So if one of the chambers passes the other bill, it then goes to the governor within how long? 3 days or something like that?
So usually it's within a couple days. The desk can always hold it. The speaker doesn't have to transmit it. But if they're passing it, they're transmitting it. And once it's transmitted, the governor has 10 days to veto it. And if he doesn't veto it, it becomes law by operation of law. Or he signs it and it becomes law immediately.
So it seems
2 ways.
Right. So if he does nothing, it becomes law automatically without a signature. If he signs it, it becomes law when he signs it. If he vetoes it, it goes back to you guys. So it seems to me your job, most importantly, is not so much, well, of course, you'd like to defeat it tomorrow, But if you can't defeat it, at least convince enough lawmakers so you don't have a veto-proof majority. Where would you put your, so handicap your chances of defeating it straight out tomorrow in the House, and then handicap what you think your chances might be to defeat it via a what is it, 2/3 veto-proof majority at some later point.
If we get 26 reps to oppose this, we can defeat a veto. I think we're going to be closer to that number than the 38 required to defeat it.
And you have how many GOP in the House?
We've got 10 GOP,
But
9
one will
that are going
vote
to
for
vote
it.
against it. So 9 who are going to vote against it. So we've got to pick up 17 of our
17,
Democratic colleagues. And no, you have conservatives in that building. How can even a moderate Democrat, how they cannot vote for this and look their constituents in the eye? They cannot. This changes the nature of our relationship to government.
Absolutely. And what time is this floor debate do you expect to happen tomorrow?
4 o'clock.
After the 4
It's going to
o'clock?
go late.
Yeah, it'll be a long debate.
We anticipate it.
If you get well, that's right. No, that's right. I won't be live then. All right. So you said it earlier without using the word that this is government really taking over the energy industry in Rhode Island, right? And that
More
is
than that.
Yeah, and that is the exact definition of socialism, right? So this is a pure socialist policy. They're taking over energy the way they want to take over healthcare. They want to do away with private health insurance and private insurers, and they want to do away here with any petroleum-based energy source, right? So they want healthcare the way they want it, and they want energy the way they want it. Damn be the people, right?
Correct. And it's not just energy, Mike. It's how they can regulate what you eat. They can regulate how far you can drive to work. I mean, I'm not saying they would do that, but the scope of the delegation and the requirements that we're putting on them, these incredibly difficult to achieve reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, the only way those can be met is with massive and aggressive regulation of not just energy, but how we live.
And yes, exactly. It is about controlling how we live. And then there's just the whole silliness of this whole thing, Blake, when it comes to anything practical. I mean, again, in the never land of make-believe of the left, they actually think that something we do in Rhode Island is going to have any impact on global climate change. I mean, it's ridiculously insane to think that our tiny state can have any impact on world global climate change.
It just can't.
It's insane. I mean, we've done the study on the TCI gas tax. Now here's the thing. Again, I don't know the numbers nationally, but I do know America is already leading the world in energy carbon emissions reductions, because without mandates, without oppressive mandates, we are, because of innovation, the fracking, the way we're using natural gas instead of coal, and other thing, and it's only going to get better. And Lord knows if we ever use nuclear, we could eliminate virtually all emissions. But America is already leading the world. In the TCI gas tax report we put out, they claim that the TCI gas tax will lead to 26% reduction in carbon emissions in the region, the Northeast region. But they lie. Later in the memo, it says, well, 19 to 20% of that's going to happen anyway, right? Just because of the path we're on with technology and innovation and all that. So this TCI thing they're saying is only going to add about another 5%. So the bottom line is, for this bill, they want to impose all this economic damage, all this hardship, all this lack of Republican form of government and true democratic process for literally zero environmental gain. What kind of cost versus benefit value analysis is that?
It's so the cost benefit analysis is so skewed. It makes you think there's another reason.
Well, what is it?
Control?
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike.
I don't
I don't
either.
know.
I don't get it. I don't even, and I think it's something other than control. I think we've gotten in this mode, like I'm going to use a sports analogy, like Red Sox, Yankees. I mean, in the end of the day, does it really matter to anybody, even back when people were all keyed up and hyped up about, in the end of the day, does it really matter if the Red Sox beat the Yankees or the Yankees beat the Red Sox to our lives? Does it really matter? No, but we cheered like hell on it because that was our team. And I think that's what the mode we've gotten into here. This is the Democrat plan, or this is the progressive plan, and I'm a Democrat or I'm a progressive. Therefore, I want to win, 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 win. And I don't care what else. I don't care about anything else other than winning for my team. I think and that's a blind stupidness, if you would. When it comes to public policy, that's not the way to do public policy. Public policy is supposed to benefit everybody, right? Not just the tribe.
Yeah. And it's even more concerning when elected representatives are like that. And there's a whole lot of them up there who know this is wrong, have expressed that it's wrong, but they can't vote against leadership. And if you can't take a leadership role, you have 14,500 people that elected you if you're a representative, and you can't stand up for them with this, you just need to retire or get voted out of office.
Blake
I don't know what
Filippi.
you're doing up there.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me on In the Dugout. If you'd like, anytime you want to come back, if you think you're making progress on the bill, we want to report it back to our viewers. We wish you good luck tomorrow. I hope you can find a number of Democrats who will have the will to stand up to the speaker and oppose this, or at least rethink it. We need the governor to stand up. I mean, he's showing absolutely no leadership in this state right now, except for on one issue, the COVID issue, and giving in to the teachers' unions and other special interests. It's not a good direction we're going in. This bill, would you agree with me that we already have a great Ocean State exodus problem with people leaving the state? And passage of this bill will only make Rhode Island a far less hospitable place to work and live.
Mike, if a business moved here, they'd be violating their fiduciary duty to their shareholders if this bill passes.
This is
never too late to do. It's never too late to do the right thing. It's not too late for Speaker Sicarci to do the right thing, or for Governor McKee to do the right thing. It's never too late.
Can the speaker pull it? Can the speaker pull it even once it passes?
Oh, yeah.
But it passed the committee.
Yeah, but he sets the floor calendar. He can pull it right now. It doesn't show weak. You're not weak for reassessing your position. It shows strength that you have, like, the confidence and the security in your position to say we were wrong.
Have you spoken to Leader Sicarci, Speaker Sicarci, on this?
Yes, I have, and the substance of those conversations are between us.
All right, but you've had that conversation. Okay.
Yes. Nick Mattiello, despite all the faults and all that stuff, he time and time again would pull bills when we would go to him. Even on the floor, we would raise a point where it's like, there's a problem with this bill. He would say, recommit all the time. That wasn't a show of weakness. That was a show of strength. You're strong if you can reassess what you thought. It shows security. And I believe that the speaker would have an incredible demonstration of strength by doing the right thing here that would set the right tone forward for this state.
All right. We will report on, I'm sure it's going to go late into the night tomorrow night. So we'll report on Wednesday's show what happened. Anytime you'd like to come on and update viewers or make another appeal, you're welcome to do that. Thank you for all your time today. Wow, I didn't expect it to go this long, but thank you for your time today. Leader Blake Filippi, minority leader of the House Republican Caucus. Thank you, Representative Filippi.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Larry. Thanks, everybody.
All right, folks. So look, this is pure socialism in its basest form. A government taking over an industry and further telling you, removing choices from us In the land of the free, they're removing the freedom for us to make our own energy decisions. And they're rubbing it in our face even further by opening the door to frivolous litigation. If the state, if you, any property owner doesn't appropriately upgrade their buildings, their cars, their lives to meet their mandates, opening up the legal floodgate. So what you see is much like they try to tell you, socialism is not a means to help people achieve prosperity. Socialism, communism is a system where everybody is designed to survive equally at some government-defined low level of mere subsistence, and everybody exists at that level. Conversely, socialism is a means to empower self-appointed elites to achieve greater power and control over our lives. This is the dirty truth. This is the actual truth. This is how it has turned out in every case. Blake Filippi, thank you. I've seen Blake Filippi in some floor debates, and he can rally. If you watch Capitol TV tomorrow, I guarantee it's going to be a good show. I'll be on this show from 4 to 5. I'll probably have to tune in later, but you should watch. Now I got a quote here from Senator Elaine Morgan on this, one of the good guys on this bill. So Senator Elaine Morgan says this bill takes away the General Assembly's representation and gives it to appointed bureaucrats. These appointees do not answer to the people. They are controlled by the governor. We need our new governor to veto this legislation. It has already passed on the Senate floor. It may sound good in theory, but it is one of the most controlling bills I have seen up there in the past 6 years. They can even come into your home if you do not comply, end quote. Blake Filippi, Patricia Morgan, who have spoken out. She called me. She will offer an amendment tomorrow. Senator Elaine Morgan and many others are good guys. Let's rename the bad guys in this episode anyway. Majority Leader Blazewski, who has sponsored this bill, and Lauren Carson from the Newport area, who is the co-sponsor, taken over as sponsor as well. Speaker of the House, Shekarchi, showing, we weren't sure what kind of speaker he would be. He tries to tell us he's moderate by bringing this bill to the floor so quickly without any real Democratic, Republican government process, showing his true colors, the progressive that most of us feared he would be. Bob Rand Fenton Fung, a Republican, voting for this bill in committee while also refusing to take an opposition position on the TCI gas tax. We didn't mention it in the interview, but Senator Dennis Algier of Westerly was the only Republican to vote for this bill in the Senate, on the Senate floor. So you've got two Republicans in Fung and Algier who are supporting this bill. It's unbelievable. And Governor McKee, I'm going to put him in the bad guy category right now. His silence on this is bad. Where's the leadership? Where is the fulfillment of the promise to stand up for the small business community in this state? He's been saying those words without really taking any action, if you think about it. He's been saying those words for years. Now is the time. This bill could be on his desk next week. It could be on his desk this week. It could get delayed, like Representative Filippi, Leader Filippi said. Might never get to his desk. you know, his budget was status quo budget. We have the worst business climate in America. Status quo isn't good enough. If Governor McKee can't take the time to take Raimondo's budget and make it more business friendly, if he can't take the time or energy to stand up against this anti-business, job-killing, budget-busting, energy mandate bill or the TCI gas tax, of which he hasn't made any comment on either, then all those words over the last few years are worthless. This is your chance, Governor McKee, to stand for something, to stand for the economy, to stand for prosperity, to stand for the small business community you say you're a champion of. This is the time. We called on you today to say you would veto this legislation. Watching it in silence, that's not leadership. Take a principled stand and you will be rewarded. The people you will upset are a sliver of the voters out there. Why do you give in to them? Why do any of these reps or senators give in to them? This is probably the most important piece of legislation in this state in years, and our governor is silent on it. And General Assembly leadership has allowed for no debate. The media has not covered this except for what Blake Filippi forced on the media today. There's been no discussion about this. There's been no discussion that our energy futures and our energy freedom is about to be completely compromised by this socialist, what we clearly explained as a socialist bill. And yet our governor is silent and General Assembly leaders are ramming it through and the media is silent. What a world. What a world. We'll see you tomorrow and in the dugout. Mike Stenhouse, wishing you a better day tomorrow.